All right, let's talk about a fascinating battle. In one corner, you've got the seasoned expert, all that experience, that subtle, nuanced intuition. And in the other corner, a simple, cold, mathematical formula. So, who wins? I think the answer is going to surprise you.
So let me just ask you straight up. When you need to predict something important, who to hire, which stock to buy, anything, where do you put your money? On the incredibly complex human mind or on a simple, straightforward set of rules? Just hang on to that answer for a bit. So our first stop is, of all places, the world of fine wine. You know, a place where taste, a refined palate, and that special feel are supposed to be everything. But then this economist, a guy named Orley Ashenfelter, comes along and decides to challenge the whole thing with a ridiculously simple formula. I mean, look at this contrast. On one side, you've got the expert talking about the holistic feel of the vintage, using years of experience. And then there's Ashenfelter's formula. It completely ignores all of that. It just looks at 3 cold, hard facts about the weather. That's it. Could something that simple really work?
Well, it didn't just work, it was better. Way better. The formula's predictions for the future prices of these super fancy Bordeaux wines were far more accurate than what the world's most famous experts were saying. A simple little algorithm beat decades of refined taste. So, how did the wine world react? Oh, they were not happy. The reaction is described as ranging from violent to hysterical. This quote just says it all, doesn't it? It's like, how could a spreadsheet that has never even tasted the wine possibly know more than we do? This hostility really shows you how much we resist this idea.
And here's the thing. This wine story wasn't just some one-off fluke. Ashenfelter's formula was really just one example of a much deeper, more profound truth that was first uncovered by a psychologist named Paul Meehl in what he famously called his disturbing little book. The history here is just so compelling. So Meehl starts way back in 1954, looking at just 20 studies. By the 80s, he could see the evidence was becoming totally overwhelming. And today, we're talking over 200 studies in dozens of different fields, everything from predicting parole violations to making medical diagnoses. And they all point in the exact same direction. And here it is, the final score. In about 60% of all these head-to-head comparisons, the algorithm was just flat out better. In the other 40% or so, it was a tie. And hey, a tie is still a win for the formula, right? Because it's always cheaper and faster. But just look at that last bar. In over 200 studies, not a single one showed the human experts being decisively better. Not one. So this leads to the big question. Why? Why are these simple formulas so dang good? And why do experts, with all of their knowledge and all of their experience, fall short so often? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. The biggest problem is our own inconsistency. See, a formula, you give it the same information, you get the same answer every single time. But us, we don't work that way. Our judgments get swayed by literally everything. If we're tired, if we're hungry, what we just read in the news. And just how inconsistent are we? Get this number is just staggering. 20% of the time. Experienced radiologists, we're talking top experts. When they're shown the exact same x-ray on 2 different occasions, they contradict their own previous diagnosis. That's the kind of noise we're dealing with in human judgment. Now, to be clear, Meehl wasn't saying you should never overrule a formula, but he set a really high bar for it, and he called it the broken leg rule. Imagine a formula predicts a guy is going to the movies tonight, but you just found out he broke his leg. Okay, that's a rare, decisive piece of information. Go ahead, overrule the formula. But if it's anything less than that, you should probably just trust the numbers. And these formulas don't have to be complicated. Seriously, check this out. Researchers found that this dead simple back-of-the-envelope calculation is a surprisingly solid predictor of whether a marriage will last. The whole point is that even these simple, kind of silly rules can often beat our complex, intuitive judgments. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman has a perfect example from when he was a young psychologist in the Israeli army. He was tasked with fixing a totally broken interview system, and he used these very ideas to do it. So he threw out the old unstructured chat and brought in a disciplined system. First, they picked 6 key traits they were looking for. Then, and this is crucial, He created factual questions about the recruit's past behavior related to each trait. No gut feelings, no what would you do if kind of stuff. The interviewers had to score each trait one by one, and then a simple formula added it all up.
And what did the interviewers think? Oh, they hated it. They absolutely hated it. They felt like he was taking away their special skill, their intuition. This complaint, "You are turning us into robots," you hear it all the time. It just perfectly captures that deep-seated resistance we have to trusting a system over our own judgment.
But you can't argue with the results. The new system was a huge improvement. And here's the really cool twist. Kahneman let the interviewers do one final intuitive gut check. He called it the close your eyes score, but they could only do it after they had gone through the whole structured process. And guess what? That final intuitive score was also predictive. So the lesson is amazing. Get the objective facts first, score them systematically, and only then is it useful to bring in that final disciplined intuitive check.
And this isn't just for hiring soldiers. I mean, look at the APGAR score. Before 1953, doctors just used their gut instinct to decide if a newborn was in trouble. Then, Dr. Virginia APGAR came up with a simple 5-point checklist. It standardized everything, took out the guesswork, and it's credited with saving literally hundreds of thousands of lives. It's a formula that truly changed the world.
Okay, so let's make this super practical. How can you actually use these powerful ideas to make better decisions in your own life? Let's say when you're hiring someone for a job, you could just follow Kahneman's playbook. First, pick a handful of traits that are absolutely essential for the job. Then, write out some factual questions to get at those traits. Come up with a simple 1 to 5 scoring scale ahead of time. In the interview, just stick to the plan and score each trait as you go. And now for the really hard part. Hire the person with the highest score, period. Even if your gut is screaming to hire someone else. You know, this takes us beyond just being effective. Paul Meehl argued that this is actually an ethical question. Think about it. If there's a tool, a formula, that's proven to make fewer mistakes in a really important decision, like hiring or a parole hearing or a medical diagnosis, is it even morally okay to ignore it and just rely on our flawed gut feelings? So after looking at wine experts, army interviews, and life-saving checklists for babies, what's the one big takeaway here? What's the bottom line? It's this, right here. The real value of an algorithm isn't just about its own predictive power. It's that it acts as a safeguard. It protects us from our own biases, from our moods, and from our fundamental human inconsistency. It gives us a baseline of disciplined, reliable reason. And let's just end on this final thought. In today's world, with more and more data everywhere, this idea is more relevant than ever. This isn't about turning us into robots. It's about being smarter. It's about being fairer, and it's about being more effective. It's about figuring out when to trust the numbers and when to trust ourselves.